75 years ago, an anomalous state was imposed on the Arab Middle East. The new creation was alien in every sense to the region's culture and anti-colonial struggle, which it would put into reverse. And it had no historical antecedents in the Arab world, despite the relentless promotion of biblical mythology to say otherwise. From the start, Israel was a Western creation, a settler colonial state set up with the aim of absorbing the Jews of the world, or as many of them as would come in preference to the United States or Europe, where most wanted to live. The new state went on to violate international law repeatedly, attack its neighbors, persecute the native Palestinian population, and impose a system of apartheid rule over them. Astonishingly, it became the recipient of unstinting support from powerful Western states, apparently unshaken by any of its excesses. Russia's crimes against Ukraine were swiftly punished by the imposition of ferocious Western sanctions, while Israel has been forgiven for similar crimes against Palestinians, and its privileged status in Western esteem has not changed. So far this year, Israel has killed more than 130 Palestinians, maintained its siege of Gaza, currently victim to yet more Israeli bombing, and continued to pursue more land grabs and evictions of native Palestinians. After 75 years of blatant pro-Israel Western bias, which flies in the face of natural justice, its effect has been to protect Israel from retribution, giving it impunity to act at will. For Western states in the aftermath of World War II and its devastating effects on their Jewish populations, Palestine was a godsend to be exploited. The 1946 Anglo-American Committee of Inquiry was set up in order to assess the country's ability to absorb this influx and to provide a refuge for a people Western states had rejected. The UN's admission of a state that flouted the UN Charter, had no fixed borders, was created by Europeans and ethnic cleansing, and was unable to give assurances that it would respect UN resolutions on the status of Jerusalem, or the return of Palestinian refugees demonstrate its position in the world by the West. The gift of Palestine as compensation to Jews for their suffering, not least the Western anti-Semitism that was behind it, has been fundamental to Western support for Israel. The residual legacy of guilt about Jewish suffering, and the idea that Jews are owed a state, still runs deep in Western psychology, most obviously in Germany, but also elsewhere in Europe and among European-origin Americans. Coupled with persistent anti-Semitism, this has endowed Israel with a special status, to be preserved as a Jewish state. Its usefulness as an agent of Western imperialism in the Middle East and beyond, and a source of surveillance technology and field-tested weaponry, add to its appeal. But these cannot alone explain the untouchable, even sacred position accorded to Israel by the West. That is why the West adheres so desperately to the two-state solution, despite all the evidence against it ever happening. It is also the major reason why the one-state solution, despite its clear advantages, not to mention inevitability, has never taken off at the official level and is unlikely to, while the present mindset persists in Western countries. Since the Arab-Israeli War of 1967, the territory between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea has been de facto one state, ruled in its entirety by Israel. The population of this one state is approximately half Arab Palestinian and half Jewish Israeli. Due to Israel's apartheid system, the Arab half does not benefit from equal rights with Jews, and the majority of Arabs have no rights at all. No such democratic state is possible, however, without the dissolution of the current state of Israel, which the West dreads. Israel-Palestine conflict is far from over, but if it happens, it will spell the end of Zionism and also of Jewish supremacy. This is the first time Palestinians, caged in the coastal enclave, have managed to inflict a significant strike against Israel vaguely comparable to the savagery Palestinians in Gaza have faced repeatedly since they were entombed in a cage more than 15 years ago, when Israel began its blockade by land, sea, and air in 2007. The West is calling the jailbreak and attack by Palestinians from Gaza unprecedented, and the most dismal intelligence failing by Israel since it was caught off guard during the Yom Kippur War exactly 50 years ago. The West remained silent, while Gaza's Palestinians were subjected to a blockade imposed by Israel that denied them the essentials of life. The few dozen Israelis being held hostage by Hamas fighters in comparison with the 2 million Palestinians held hostage by Israel in an open-air prison for nearly 2 decades. The Palestinians cannot subjugate life in Israel. They have no such power, even if a few briefly manage to break out of their cage. If the war does escalate, the most likely first step is a tightening of sanctions against Iran, which helped plan the Hamas attack. That would reverse the easing of tensions with the U.S. that had helped Iran increase production by about 0.5 million barrels a day over the past year. The war may also derail the improving relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel, which could have helped cap oil prices under a U.S. military deal with the kingdom. The real escalation would be if Iran and Israel were drawn into direct conflict, however. So far, Lebanon's Hezbollah, supported by Iran, has been pretty quiet. If it does more than just lob a few mortar rounds into Israel, it could provoke another nasty border war. With the Israeli public demanding retribution for the cold-blooded killing of so many of their citizens, a worse case is that Israel acts directly against Iran. In that case, oil prices could soar on the assumption that Iran would step up its harassment of tankers coming out of Iraq. What won't happen is a repeat of the Arab oil embargo that followed the last invasion of Israel half a century ago, as Arab states are now much more friendly to Israel. That embargo threw much of the West into recession, led to fuel shortages in the U.S., and helped restructure both the U.S. economy and relations with the Saudis. The UN Security Council said it was holding an emergency meeting about the situation behind closed doors, and Germany's development minister said her country would review its aid for Palestinian areas. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin ordered the Ford Carrier Strike Group to sail to the eastern Mediterranean to be ready to assist Israel. The deployment, which also includes a host of ships and warplanes, underscores the concern that the United States has in trying to keep the conflict from growing whilst pledging its full support for Israel. Thanks for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe for more videos.